No artificial intelligence was used to narrate this video.
Welcome to another episode on the Joel Wright 2 channel. Today I'm going to explore how many B-58s my dad flew during his military career. Between 1962 and 1965, my dad flew the Convair B-58 Hustler, the world's first supersonic strategic bomber. And it wasn't just supersonic, it went Mach 2. Convair built 116 B-58s. The first prototype XB-58 was delivered to the Air Force in 1956. The bomber was declared operational in 1960, but it had a very short operational life of the Air Force. The entire fleet was retired by early 1970, and with the exception of 8 survivors, the rest of the fleet was sent to the boneyard at that time and was all chopped up for scrap by the late 70s. There were only 2 operational bombardment wings that flew the B-58. One was the 43rd Bomb Wing at Carswell Air Force Base, Texas, which was later transferred to Little Rock Air Force Base in Arkansas. The second was the 305th Bomb Wing out of Bunker Hill Air Force Base, Indiana, which was later renamed Grissom Air Force Base and today is known as Grissom Air Reserve Base. My dad was assigned to the 305th Bomb Wing at Bunker Hill. Since the B-58 fleet was pretty small, only 116 aircraft, I got to wondering one day, I wonder how many of those my dad flew. There's a pretty good chance he flew a substantial number of those airframes. So to assist me in my research, I happened to have my dad's personal flight log that he kept when he was in the B-58 program. This is not an Air Force record. This is something he kept as a personal record. So in this log, he captures the date he flew each B-58 and the tail number and the flight duration. All right, so let's get on with it. Here are all the B-58 tail numbers that my dad flew between 1962 and 1965. Now, unless otherwise noted, all the B-58s you're going to see here in a moment were all sent to the boneyard and eventually scrapped.
Tail number 661, 10 sorties. 661 was actually the second B-58 built. It was originally delivered as one of the 2 XB-58 prototypes. It was later converted to a TB-58 trainer. Tail 663 at 11 sorties. This was the B-58 my dad flew the most. This airframe is preserved at Grissom Air Museum at Grissom Air Reserve Base in Indiana. Tail 670, 1 sortie. Tail 671, 9 sorties. Tail 672, 3 sorties. This TB-58 was actually the very first B-58 my dad flew in when going through combat crew training. He's not pictured in this photo. Tail 2429, 1 sortie. 2431, 1 sortie. 2432, 1 sortie. 2436, 1 sortie. 2443, 1 sortie. This airframe was later destroyed in 1965 when the pilot undershot the runway during the final approach to Le Bourget Airport in Paris, France. 2463, 1 sortie. This photo, of course, was taken at the boneyard when the airframe was being scrapped. Tail 110, 3 sorties. Tail 113, 1 sortie. 115, 3 sorties. Tail 117, 3 sorties. Tail 118, 2 sorties. Tail 119, 1 sortie. This airframe was later destroyed in 1966 when it impacted the ground in Kentucky during a mission. 120, 1 sortie. 121, 4 sorties. 122, 1 sortie. Tail 125, 1 sortie. 126, 3 sorties. Tail 127, 1 sortie. Tail 128, 1 sortie. This airframe was later destroyed in 1965 when the aircraft departed the runway during a landing at Bunker Hill Air Force Base, Indiana. Tail 051, 2 sorties. Tail 052, 2 sorties. My dad is not pictured in this photo. Tail 053, 1 sortie. 054, 3 sorties. Tail 055, 1 sortie. Tail 056, 1 sortie. This aircraft was later destroyed in an accident in 1969 over Illinois. Tail 058, 2 sorties. Tail 059, 3 sorties. This airframe is preserved at the SAC Museum near Ashland, Nebraska. Here are a couple of photos of my dad visiting the museum in 2010, getting into the cockpit of his old bomber. Tail 061, 2 sorties. This airframe was later destroyed in 1967 in an accident over Texas. Tail 062, one sortie. This airframe was later destroyed in 1968 at Bunker Hill Air Force Base, Indiana, when the plane lost control due to a mechanical failure shortly after takeoff. Tail 064, one sortie. Tail 065, one sortie. This airframe was later destroyed in 1967 at Bunker Hill Air Force Base, Indiana, when the plane lost control shortly after takeoff. Tail 067, one sortie. 068, two sorties. Tail 070, one sortie. Tail 073, two sorties. This aircraft was later destroyed in 1969 over Nebraska due to a systems failure during flight. My dad is not pictured in this photo. Tail 074, one sortie. Tail 076, one sortie. 077, two sorties. 078, one sortie. My dad is not in this photo. 079, one sortie. And finally, Tail 080, one sortie. This aircraft was the last B-58 delivered to the Air Force, and somewhat ironically, this was also the last B-58 my dad flew. This airframe is preserved at the Pima Air and Space Museum in Tucson, Arizona.
All right, so in conclusion, my dad flew 46 of the 116 B-58 airframes. I hope you enjoyed that little overview on how many B-58s my dad flew. I hope to make more videos about my dad's Air Force career, so stay tuned. All right, thanks for watching.